Well, first of all, I'd like to certainly amend some of the bills that the late Senator Cherry introduced, filed before she passed, but particularly ones that would aid toward equal employment. She had.
She arrived at the Joseph Caleb Center. I was already there with a number of her supporters because we were out campaigning all day, neighbors, friends, students from Miami-Dade College, and all the news cameras were there. And the governor then, at that time, was Bob Graham, who was also our U.S. Senator, but he was governor at that time, to meet her at the 110 room at the Joseph Caleb Center. And that night was historic in many ways. To have her just be an everyday person concerned about issues in our community, to win that election was just to show you what could happen with hard work and commitment and prayer.
To vitalize this district is going to take long-term recurring revenue funding.
I think people voted for her because they could sense her personal integrity, they could sense her honesty, and they could sense her ability to get things done on their behalf. She was not a self-serving person. She was really interested in her community. And the community had a sense of that, and that's why they voted for her over and over and over. She never lost a race.
But her method for earning the votes was not just that transactional kind of things that you would think that politicians do, because after all, when she first ran, she was not a politician. She was just somebody known in the community for having worked her elbows off for the people in the community. She worked programs supporting education, housing, community development, every single thing you can imagine, and she was loved.
My mother had never run for office before and had a long time in education and in community service. However, once she got into politics, she was like a fish in water. She was strategic. She knew how to communicate across the aisle. Everyone she worked with, Republicans, Democrats, they all loved her. She was a legislator.
She also had a deep bank of committed people who had grown up under her. She was a college professor. So she taught at the predominantly and historically black universities here, the larger ones in the state of Florida. So she had a deep bench of goodwill that she had earned over the course of a lifetime. And I am really happy that the people of Miami-Dade County recognized that and rewarded that by putting her in such a position of trust that was more formal, because they knew that they could rely on her.
A woman that grew up in segregation, segregated South.
She went off to University of Michigan in a segregated train because no school in Florida would accept her to get a master's degree. So she got it and she came back.
Through that experience, made her the leader that this community needed and wanted. And the fact that she was an educator and spent so many years, over 30 years at Miami-Dade College, serving the community, serving students, understanding that education is the key to success. Carrie Meek took all of that to the State House of Representatives in 1979, in 1982 to the State Senate, and in 1992 to Congress, which she was able to provide national and international leadership on behalf of the people of goodwill.
She believed strongly in education. She left us every summer to pursue her doctorate. And her sorority sisters, my aunts, they all pitched in keeping us. Because I am very cognizant of the fact that my mother was a single mother with 3 children. And yes, she served her community, but she also had to serve her family. And that also meant requiring that we get a good education. In spite of her traveling, in spite of the demands on her time, she was a very strong advocate for higher education.
As I tell you, my mom's always been sensitive to supporting and advocating for people who were, we call in our community, the least of these. And so that also extended to her students and people who were not her students at Miami-Dade College. I never knew who was going to be in my room sleeping because I was a college student who needed housing. And because my bedroom had the twin bed, so whoever it was, as long as it was a girl, was put in my room. So I got so many new friends based on my mom caring for people who needed the help. But it didn't just happen at Miami-Dade College. It was throughout Bethune-Cookman College, Florida A&M University, and everywhere she went, she left a big legacy of giving and caring and sharing and supporting young people.
What I remember most about my mother is that she was an incredible human being that was filled with integrity and compassion. There are a lot of people that accomplish a lot of things, but to have compassion, to have integrity, to have a belief system was very important for me as a child growing up. And not only for me, but she influenced so many others to be compassionate, to care about others, to have integrity and truth and honesty in everything that you do.
Her life and her ethic was about loving people. She once told me, Kendrick, to serve in public service, you have to love people. You can't like them. You have to love them. And Carrie Meek loved people. Carrie Meek was a perfect example of things we read about, inspired to be. And the fact that she was a part of all of our lives is a blessing in itself and an education at the same time.
I want them to remember that she gave of herself, not because of her own ego, but she was just driven to make sure that her people and that her community was thriving. And she recognized this community as being comprised of individuals. So she never broad-brushed anything or anybody. She took people where she found them, gave them the kind of love and support that was needed, whether they were kings, queens, serfs, or whatever. And so I want people to remember the love and sacrifices that she made for this community, and I'm so grateful to this community for having loved her back.
And I think for us to honor her memory, her purpose, is to be as close to embracing her philosophy and helping the least of these. I'm not sad at all. I'm actually happy. I'm happy at the fact that she was able to leave a stamp on me and thousands of others because of her purity and purpose on this earth. And so this celebration, this reflection on her life and her memory is one that we should put on the highest pedestal that we can in our minds and our hearts. And I just want to say a big thank you on behalf of my family and on behalf of all communities that allowed Carrie Meek to represent them for so many years in elected service, and all of those students she was able to help and educate and guide over the years. I want to just thank all of you for allowing her to be all that God intended for her to be.